All right. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holden here. How's it going? Good to see you. It's a little loud, maybe. A little too loud. I'll turn that down just a little bit. Uh, how's it going, everybody? We're going to be talking about Hezbollah in our hemisphere tonight. There's actually a lot to talk about in this section because we really don't hear much from the mainstream media about just what a threat Hezbollah actually is inside the Western Hemisphere and even inside the United States. So thank you for being here. Let me know where you're coming in from. Hello from Florida, Belgium, Arizona, Sacramento. Nice. That's great. Democrat occupied Arizona. Well, at least you can open carry. You got constitutional carry out there. That's nice. Tanya, if you're having an issue getting the book, not Death by Civilization, it's Death of Civilization. If you're having trouble getting Death by Civilization, that's because I didn't write that book. You just have to go to chuckholton.com and you can find it right there. And if you're having trouble with that, then send an email to amy@holtonnews.com and she'll help you out. But there is no book, Death by Civilization. It's my book. My book is called Death of Civilization. Okay. Now, I want to talk about just Hezbollah's covert operations in the Western Hemisphere, which have been going on for a long time, and what that means for U.S. national security. Now, I'm going to get to the point a little later where I talk about why the Biden administration made it worse by essentially knowing about this problem but doing nothing about it, and how the next president, whoever he or she may be, could, if they wanted to, make it much less of a problem. And so stay tuned for that, because I'll be talking about that as we dive into this topic. Okay. So first of all, let's just talk about what Hezbollah has been doing for all these years in Latin America and across the United States. First, I want to talk about, we're going to examine their criminal enterprises. So here's the biggest reason why Hezbollah is engaged in the Western Hemisphere, is that they're trying to make money. And that's probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen more attacks from Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere, not because they're not here, but simply because they don't want to upset the apple cart when it comes to the hundreds of millions of dollars a year that they make from businesses in the Western Hemisphere. So it's like, well, you know what it reminded me of actually was when years ago, 2012, I think it was, I took my family to Mexico, and we lived in Mexico for one winter. Went down there to help my sister, who was opening up or helping to run an orphanage down there at the time. And we moved into a town called San Carlos, which is near Guaymas, which is in Sonora State, a couple hours south of Nogales or Tucson. So San Carlos is a beautiful beachside, village with lots of $1 million houses, lots of Americans that live there, and it's nice and safe, believe it or not. I mean, here it is in the middle of northern Mexico, which is one of the most violent places you could find, and all of the cartel activity that goes on in those areas just sort of stopped at the borders, if you will, of San Carlos. And it took quite a while for us to figure out why. What we figured out was San Carlos is a place where the cartel bosses like to go on vacation. And so they don't want to have to deal with, getting assassinated or something crazy like that when they're on vacation. So what they've done is they've kind of made a truce. They made a pact amongst themselves, all the different gangs, that, hey, we have San Carlos is like Switzerland. It's a neutral area. We're not going to do anything there. You guys promised not to do anything there. And that's how we'll roll in San Carlos. So that we'll do all of our dirty work elsewhere in Mexico and up into the United States, but we won't do it in San Carlos. And that's kind of what this reminds me of with Hezbollah. It's like they're keeping their business interests separate from their military interests, so that if the military interests get destroyed, which they have been for the last couple of months, their businesses won't be affected that much, and they'll still have the ability to rebuild. And this is why you need to know about this, because Hezbollah might be defeated on the battlefield sometime in the near future, but they are they're not yet defeated on the economic battlefield, because that all takes place, most of it, between Latin America and the United States and Africa. So let me explain how that works. First of all, did you know that Hezbollah is one of the largest buyers and sellers of used cars on the planet? The Hezbollah organization has a bunch of front companies that go to the United States. They wire like $300 million a year to the US, and then they take that money and they go buy tons of used cars across the United States and in Latin America and other places. They then put those used cars on like shipping containers, put them on ships, send them over to Africa, and then proceed to sell them in Africa. Hi, Mars. How you doing? And you might say, well, wait a minute. Why are they going to all that trouble? Well, used cars are one of those things. They're quite valuable. You know, one used car is worth quite a bit of money. And they're not, the purchase and sale of them is not heavily regulated by any stretch. For example, if I just decided to sell my car someday in the United States, I don't own a car in the United States, but if I had a car in the United States and I wanted to sell it, I just put it in the newspaper. Some guy shows up and says, hey, you take $500 less. And I go, yeah, okay, sure. Some people are saying the audio is a little low, so I'm going to juice it up a little more. So they buy my car, they give me the money, I sign the back of the title. They take that title and they don't even have to go in my state and get it retitled. They could get it retitled in a different state, or they could just forget about it, put that car on a ship and send it to Africa where the title doesn't matter. So somebody's asking whether or not they steal cars in Canada and ship them to the United States or Africa, or ship them over to Africa. Would not surprise me one bit if they stole them. But what I'm talking about is more of a money laundering scheme. And so it wouldn't really work as a money laundering scheme if they were, see, now we got a slight distortion because I've got too much audio. Well, I'm going to leave it right about there. So they buy the cars in the United States, they put them on a ship, they send them to Benin, of all places, and they sell them over there at a profit. It's also a cash transaction over there. Then that profit is then sent to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, where do they get the $300 million to start with to buy these cars? Well, that's where they're heavily involved in drug trafficking around the world. So the vast majority of their drugs, they buy drugs in Venezuela and Colombia. They then ship them to the United States. They take the profits from those drugs, which are dirty. That's dirty money. It's virtually all cash and it's dirty money. They then get that money over to, well, different places. Okay. One thing that they could do with that money, though, is they could just keep it in the United States and buy used cars with it. Because again, used cars, they can buy a $20,000, $25,000, $35,000, $45,000 used car and pay cash for that thing. And all that dirty money just became an asset, a hard asset. Then when they sell that asset in Africa, it's not traceable by the United States, but that money, that cash they get in Africa is cleaner than the money that they use to buy the car with. They then send that to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah can use it for whatever they want. They can also use it to wire right back to the United States to buy more cars. So it's a big circle. So this is the way that they have operated for years. And Venezuela is a willing partner in this, both the drug money, the drug narco trafficking and the money laundering, because there are many people in high levels of government in Venezuela who are actually Lebanese. A lot of people don't know that, but there are more than 500,000 people in Venezuela who have Lebanese ancestry. It's maybe about 2% of the population at this point. And at one point, the vice president of Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro was a Lebanese man who was heavily involved in this stuff. So, question, do you think we have sleeper cells in the U.S.? Yes, we do. And I'll get to that, One Tired Mama, in just a little bit. I'm going to talk about that specifically. So now imagine if it's one thing if they want to get drugs into the United States, there's established routes for that. There've been a lot of these semi-submersibles that they build in Colombia. It's a kind of a almost submarine. It travels just below the surface of the water. It doesn't have to be completely sealed up because they just have like a snorkel that goes out and takes air in and things like that. But you can't see the boat itself as it's traveling just under the surface of the water. They fill these things with 5, 6, 8 tons of drugs, and then they send them via the Caribbean Sea up to just off the coast of Mexico, and they scuttle them. They have boats that come from shore. They offload all the cocaine and everything off of the semi-submersible onto these launches that go back to the shore, and then they just sink those fiberglass semi-submersibles. There's actually a graveyard just off the shore in the Caribbean Sea of the northern part of Mexico, where there are hundreds of these semi-submersibles just sunk on the bottom of the ocean. So that's one way they get in. There are other ways, but obviously we know that there are established narco trafficking routes into the United States. They then take those drugs in, sell them in the U.S., take the money. They either try to ship the cash out of the country, which is more risky, or buy cars in the United States with that cash, and then ship the cars out, which is much less risky. Now, that's easy enough. If they wanted to get drugs in, that's easy enough. But imagine if they wanted to get people into the United States, as in Hezbollah operatives. It's even easier. They take those guys and they take them to Venezuela. They sheep dip them. The Venezuelan government will just give them a Venezuelan passport, make them instant Venezuelan citizens. They don't appear on any biometric, database or anything like that anywhere in the world. So there's no way to check to see if they're actually Venezuelan or what. And then they just walk those guys right through the Darien Gap. They come right through Panama here, and they head north up to the United States, and they walk right in, present themselves as Venezuelan refugees to the police, to the border police, and those guys get allowed to stay in the United States. There are millions of Venezuelans in the United States right now. And so how many of those happen to be actual Lebanese, actually from Lebanon, Hezbollah operatives? Well, hard to say, but I'll get to that more in just a minute. So stick around. We're going to talk more about Hezbollah's presence in the United States specifically and the proof that we have that they are here. So let's see here. Now, Hezbollah has actually done more than just use the Western Hemisphere for money making and human trafficking, drug trafficking, all that. Hezbollah has used the region mostly in what they call the tri-border area, which is Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. And they've had just a hub of activity there. They've even had training camps. We're talking legit, actual terrorist training camps in that region. And of course, they've had things like that in Venezuela. There are some rumors that Hezbollah has put camps together in the kind of remote area between Venezuela and Colombia. I've gotten very close to those areas, or gone not into the Venezuelan part, but on the Colombian side. And the closer you get to Colombia, the closer you get in Colombia to Venezuela, especially in the northern part, the more you will see a lot of Muslims. You'll see lots of mosques. You'll see lots of people in headdresses, women in burqas, things like that. And so it is not like something that's hidden. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been there, traveled out there, and I've seen it happening. All right. Now, going back to the money laundering, Lebanese officials. Okay, so hang on a second. Let me answer this question from Mark Ackerman. Did Nasrallah also supervise the illicit drug trade? We don't know how involved Nasrallah himself was, but there's no question he knew it was happening. And I'm going to talk about that a little more too, because it is 100% against the Quran. It is just anti-Islam to be involved in criminal drug trafficking and human trafficking and money laundering. This is absolutely haram, but Hezbollah has been doing it for years. Now, Jimmy the Jew from Philly says, how likely is it that Knesset will declare war on Iran when Iran attacks again, but will Israel attack preemptively? Well, Israel has already said that it will attack preemptively on Iran. If you don't know what he's talking about, the news is coming out today that Israel expects that Iran will attack again sometime in the next few days. Iran is actually working on a plan to attack Israel it's a massive attack. It'll be, they say, bigger than anything that they've done heretofore. Why does that keep doing that? I'm trying to move that out of the way. Bigger than anything they've done heretofore, but obviously, you know, the last time they said Iran was about to attack and then a month went by, I flew over there in a hurry to be there for the attack, and then it didn't happen for the entire month. Then when I left for a couple of weeks and then came back like 3 weeks later, then the attack happened the first night I was back. So if Israel sees that Iran is preparing an attack, Israel has already gotten the green light from the Knesset to preemptively attack Iran. And how likely is it they will declare war on Iran? Like formally declare war? That's a really good question. I don't know that they even need to. Everybody knows they're at war with Iran already. That would be a real Captain Obvious moment for Israel to go ahead and declare war. I don't know what that would change, but yeah, maybe. Question from TJ says, are these regular criminals on the street that just found someone to sell to, or are these Hezbollah followers? Could these people be terrorists? Well, Hezbollah is using a lot of people in Latin America who are not themselves Hezbollah. They're just a cog in the wheel. They're just a little link in the chain of sales and purchases and money transfers and all of this. Okay. Many of them, in my experience, because I've actually talked to some of these people who are involved in this, and many of them don't have any idea that they're assisting a terror organization with what they're doing. They're just doing business, and they have a client who often buys vehicles from them or wires them money and asks them to take that money and give it to somebody else or transfer it here or there, whatever. This is intentionally complex and complicated. Hezbollah wants it to be that way to make it hard to track. The DEA has a lot of information out about this. They have been tracking this for a long time. And, so let's just get rid of that. That's just, if Turkey attacks Israel, can Israel, country boy, this is not a slight on you, sir, in any way, shape, or form. But I just want to point out, because I see this happen a lot of people spell Israel wrong. Israel is Israel, not Israel, Israel. It's Israel. I'm a writer and an editor by trade, so that's kind of a pet peeve, and I don't get upset about it, but I just see a lot of people do it, so I thought I'd just mention it to people. But if Turkey attacks Israel, Israel could attack Turkey. They certainly could. It doesn't really have anything to do with being a part of NATO at that point, because NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. That doesn't have a lot to do with North Atlantic Treaty Alliance doesn't have to do with what's going on in Israel. Turkey has threatened to attack Israel in retaliation for what's going on in Gaza. But I'll tell you right now, Turkey is very, very unlikely that Turkey would actually attack Israel, because Turkey still gets a lot from the United States, and they would stand to lose what they get from the United States if they attacked Israel. Okay, let's go back to the money laundering scheme that Hezbollah is using in Latin America and the United States. So let's say that you're a used car dealer in, Lafayette, Louisiana, and you got a guy that comes in and he buys cars from you from time to time. And what you don't know, all you know is this guy's an avid car enthusiast, or maybe, you figure he buys them and fixes them up a little bit, repaints them, and then sells them to somebody else. These are used cars, not new cars, right? Maybe even that he exports them. Maybe he says, yeah, I get paid to export these things to Africa because, man, a car that you can buy for $15,000 in the United States used might go for $25,000 in Africa, and it only cost me like $4,000 to move it over there. So I can arbitrage the value of cars between the United States and Africa, and I can make some money at that. And what he doesn't realize is what this seller, I'm talking about the car dealer, doesn't know is that the guy who's doing this is getting the money that he uses to buy the cars from a third party that he's never met outside the United States. And these guys are getting wired money in the United States. Some American, some guy from Louisiana, he got approached by somebody who says, hey, I've got an import-export business. Would you be my representative in the United States? And the guy says, well, sure. He says, okay, I'm going to wire you money. You go buy as many used cars as you can with that money. Take them to the port. I've got somebody else there to load them on a ship for you. And that's all you need to know. You get a cut out of that. You get $1,000 per car. And the guy's like, sweet. I'll do that all day long. So he goes and he's just a link in the chain. He has no idea that the guy who's wiring him the money is a Hezbollah operative in the United States, or He's a cartel member in the United States who just got that money by selling, cocaine or methamphetamines or who knows what in the United States, right? He's bringing this money to this guy, getting the money to the guy. Maybe he brings it in cash. Maybe he doesn't wire it. We don't know. But that's how it works. And so there are people in the United States who are unwittingly assisting Hezbollah at making hundreds of millions of dollars a year by what they're doing. And this has been tracked down, and it funnels millions of dollars into Hezbollah's global operations. We don't even know how much. What we do know is that Hezbollah wires about 300 to 400 million a year into the United States. Now, the question is, why can't we just grab that money? And the answer is, well, we do, the DEA does grab it when it can prove who it's coming from. But because of the very complicated nature of this, a lot of times the money's not coming from Lebanon. It's not coming from a known Hezbollah source. It's coming from somebody in Africa, or it's coming from somebody in the United States. The money from Lebanon will go to Venezuela or Colombia to buy more cocaine. That money then goes to the United States and gets sold. That cash gets transferred into cars. Those cars go to Africa, make a profit. That Africa money goes back to Hezbollah. Hezbollah then wires a portion of that money back to Venezuela, and they start the process all over again. You see how that works? Very complex. But it works, and it's been working for many years. So, like I say, I just keep making this point that the Israelis could completely decimate Hezbollah's military wing, and they are. Inside Lebanon, today they hit Tyre again. Yesterday they hit Sidon. Day before that they hit Kfar I showed you all that stuff. And they are just step by step dismantling Hezbollah's military capabilities. Hezbollah, again, today fired dozens, if not more than 100, munitions from Lebanon into Israel. If you have the Shofar app, mine's been just going off all day long. It's kind of hard to get any work done sometimes. I want to just mute it, but I won't let myself mute it because I want to know what it's like in in Israel. And so they've been firing those munitions, and at the rate they're going, between what Israel is destroying on a daily basis and Hezbollah is actually firing at Israel, they're going to be out of munitions completely in a short period of time, maybe months, maybe a matter of months. So how do we know that these guys are actually doing this? Well, let me go over some notable arrests and indictments, okay? First of all, 2011, there was a guy named Ayman Juma, and he was arrested for shipping cocaine to the United States and then laundering over $250 million in those proceeds for the Zeta cartel, and then through the Zeta cartel to Hezbollah. And it was proven, and he was indicted. That's from the Jewish Policy Center. Now, there was another guy in 2019 named Qasim Tajuddin, who was sentenced to 5 years and forfeited $50 million for his role in a money laundering scheme that benefited Hezbollah. That also comes from the Jewish Policy Center. There's another guy in 2019, Ali Karani, who was convicted of gathering intelligence on U.S. targets for Hezbollah's Islamic Jihad organizations, including locations in New York City. So are there sleeper cells in the United States? You bet there are. And what are they doing? They're collecting intelligence for future attacks. They are preparing the ground in the United States for future terrorist attacks on U.S. citizens. There is no question that that is happening. Samar El-Debek is another guy in 2017 who was charged with providing material support to Hezbollah and conducting surveillance of potential U.S. targets which included, get this, the embassy right here in Panama. So Hezbollah was looking at striking at U.S. embassies in Latin America, including not just Panama, but also in Argentina and in Brazil. They actually did conduct a terror attack on the embassy, in Argentina. And I forget what year that was. Maybe I've got that here. Let's see. Argentina. No, wrong one. Let's go find. Yeah, they were implicated in major terrorist attacks in Argentina back in the 90s, 1992 and 1994. They bombed the Israeli embassy and another Israeli Mutual Aid Association community center, which resulted in more than 100 people dead and hundreds of other casualties. In recent years, authorities have continued to uncover Hezbollah's activities in Latin America. For instance, in 2023, just last year, Brazilian police arrested 2 people with suspected links to Hezbollah and accused them of planning attacks on Jewish targets in Brazil. So because of this, several Latin American countries have designated Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, including Argentina, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, Paraguay, Panama, and others. These designations are meant to make it easier for authorities to disrupt financial networks and operational capabilities in this region. So yes, they are in Latin America and they're in the United States, without a doubt. Is there anything we can do to help stop this? Well, if a guy with a Lebanese accent comes and wants to buy your used car out off of Facebook Marketplace, no, I'm kidding. That's probably not going to happen. They're probably getting them from dealerships, but maybe they're buying them from individual people as well. It would be even harder to track if they did that. Now, let's talk about why. First of all, we got 6,000 people online. Would you please do me a favor right now and go hit the like button if you like this content and you want to know about these kinds of things? Go hit that like button. That tells YouTube that more people need to see this content, and they'll share this live on people's feeds who wouldn't have seen it otherwise. So you can be responsible for helping to grow the podcast by just hitting that like button over there. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button, and the little notification bell will let you be notified when we go live on this channel. And that way you won't miss a chance to actually interact. That's what people like the most about these things, I think. While I'm at it, I just want to point out, if you are concerned about stuff like this, the one thing I can say to answer your question about, what you need to do to be prepared for this is to be prepared for any eventuality. I just released a book called Death of Civilization that will help you be more prepared in the event of violence, loss of civility, I like to call it, in the event of election-related violence or protests that get out of hand, mob violence in your region. Even if you live in a suburban or even rural area, these things could be coming your direction, and it helps to be united as a community. So what the book is really about, the first part of the book talks about how civilization is dying in the United States and talks about the reasons why or what's causing it. But the second half of the book is what you can do about that. One of the reasons that civilization is dying in America is because we aren't civilized with our neighbors anymore. Most people don't even know their neighbors. They don't even know who they are. They don't know what they do. They don't know anything about their families or anything. We might wave at them when we're walking our dog or something like that, but that's about it. And if you don't know the people in your neighborhood, that is one of the foundational building blocks of civilization. And so you should know the people in your neighborhood. And so the Death of Civilization talks about how you can do something about that. You can actually start working to get to know the people around you. And when you do, it's actually very, very helpful for your own preparation in times of crisis. And Rosales, if all your neighbors don't speak English, then learn a few phrases in Spanish or whatever language they do know, right? So please go to chuckholton.com. Just become a supporter over there. You can get a free download of that book and my book about how to help your church start a crisis preparedness team called The Grace Project. You can get both of those books by becoming a supporter over at chuckholton.com and a lot more. There are other benefits like access to the movies that I've put out, the documentaries. I've got 65 documentaries. I've got 10 other books in print. And you get lots of, we're just had another meeting today about how we can make it even better for members over at chuckholton.com. So you can support me, keep me in the field, and get copies of that book by going to chuckholton.com. Okay, let's talk about why this is happening. Why has it been so easy for Hezbollah to get such a foothold in the United States? There are likely thousands of Hezbollah operatives in the United States just waiting to be told what to do. Or they're not just waiting, they're actually preparing. They're doing reconnaissance on targets. They're making preparations for a massive multi-cell terror attack in the United States. I actually have made several videos. I made one documentary about a place in Arkansas, just outside of Little Rock, that is helping law enforcement prepare for just such a scenario. It's a training center called the Darcy, it's called Darcy, the Direct Action Resource Center, DARC. And what Darcy does is they bring together police from all around the country and they throw them together with no preparation into a scenario. They have a 700-acre campus that's got mock-ups of towns and inner city, areas and even villages and stuff like that on it. They throw them together in there in a massive multi-cell terror attack scenario and then force them to respond to this. And what they find is that the first night it's an absolute clown show. Why? Because these cops, they all come from different jurisdictions and different police departments. So they have different standard operating procedures, different tactics, techniques, and procedures, and different frequencies on their radios, different call signs. They don't know how to work together at all. And that's one thing that terrorists have taken advantage of in the past is they'll go to, if you remember the terror attacks in Mumbai, this is more than a decade ago now, they had cells that went active all across Mumbai in lots of different areas and started doing, very bad things, creating shenanigans all around Mumbai. And what it did is it caused absolute gridlock so that nobody could get anywhere. The police couldn't even respond because of the traffic jams. And these guys absolutely created chaos across the city. The Darcy organization put together this training facility to help police learn to deal with those things by standardizing their tactics, techniques, and procedures. Standardizing the way they talk on the radio, standardizing the kind of radios they have. How do you work together with federal, state, and local police all converging on the scene of a massive multi-cell attack? So it's a 5-week project. Okay. I'm sorry, it's five week. It's a 5-day training thing that they do. And they put these guys through their paces and they learn a ton about how to do that. Okay. So let's go back to talking about Hezbollah and why I want to analyze why the Biden administration is partially responsible for this problem. First of all, the problems existed before the Biden administration took office. And under the Trump administration, the DEA had more or less had the handcuffs off, and they could go after these guys. If you recall, looking at those examples I gave you, other than the one that happened in 2011, all of the other sentencings and chargings that happened against Hezbollah operatives in the United States happened during the Trump administration. All right? There have not been any since the Trump administration left office. Why? Because the Biden administration has limited what the DEA was able to do against Hezbollah. They limited, they even took some of those things off of the table as far as calling them terror networks and things like that. They removed them from the terror watch list. They, inside Venezuela, one of the places where this was most concerning for the United States, they loosened the sanctions on the Venezuelan regime, even though nothing changed about the Venezuelan regime. They didn't get nicer toward the world community. They got more aggressive. The Maduro regime got worse against the regime, against the United States. But the Biden administration lifted many of the sanctions against Venezuela. So they made it easier for Hezbollah to do what they're doing in Latin America. All right? This is a big problem. So efforts probably, now why would they do that? Well, the Biden administration has been really hot to re-engage with Iran over this joint JCPOA, joint, I forget what that, joint comprehensive plan of action, the Iranian deal that the Biden administration inherited from the Obama administration, which was turned off by the Trump administration, and then turned right back on by the Biden administration. The efforts to re-engage with Iran might have led to a softer stance on Hezbollah to avoid jeopardizing those negotiations, okay? And that's a big problem. Some people believe that insufficient resources have been dedicated to counter Hezbollah's activities in the Western Hemisphere. I don't think there's much of a question about that. I think it's actually a virtual certainty that we could have dedicated more resources to that and taken a harder stance on it, without a doubt. Now, what could a future administration do to make a difference? Well, they could target these financial networks. They could start tracking down these very complex networks and shutting them down, right? They could collaborate with our allies in Latin American countries like Colombia, for one, to disrupt these networks and impose more sanctions on Venezuela to keep them from sheep dipping Hezbollah terrorists and then sending them up to the United States, for example. We could strengthen law enforcement by allocating more resources to those agencies like the DEA for these operations specifically. We could put together multinational task forces. One of the big problems is that these crimes take place across jurisdictions. So what happens in the United States, meaning buying used vehicles and shipping them out, that in and of itself is not a crime. You need multi-jurisdictional task forces to be able to prosecute these multi-jurisdictional crimes. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses of the system we have in the United States today, is that so many of the crimes that we see today are multi-jurisdictional. The criminal is a Norwegian kid who's scamming people in the United States out of their money using a internet connection that's run through Austria or Russia or someplace like that. And so you've got all these different countries that are in the mix, and how are they all going to work together to prosecute these people when in Russia, for example, it's not actually against the law to do what they're doing. All right. So Could I do a whole podcast on Elon Musk? Not really in my wheelhouse. I've been, reading a lot about him lately, but that's not really in my wheelhouse. We could apply more diplomatic pressure on other countries like Benin that provide the ability for them to make these things. And so it would not be difficult for the next administration, whoever is the next president, to actually take action on this and put a stop to it and hurt Hezbollah, because Hezbollah doesn't just get money from Iran, $1 billion a year. They also get money from the United States in several ways, because what I've shown before, how the United States gives $400 million a year to the Lebanese army. The Lebanese army then, siphons some of that off for Hezbollah. The United States also helps to fund UNIFIL through the United Nations. UNIFIL, some of their money very likely goes to at least benefit Hezbollah one way or another. All right. So we could put a stop to that. The next president could easily turn that off in a minute. But they could also fund efforts to put a stop to these business organizations that assist Hezbollah, and we could really starve them out, okay? I'm getting distracted because all these people talking about Elon Musk. Is he a good guy? I mean, I don't think Elon Musk is a bad guy. Elon Musk is a very, very, very driven person. He's not a very empathetic person. He's big on things like efficiency. And so I like that. And if you were to put Elon Musk in charge of streamlining the US government, I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. Okay, so some people say he has a lot of wives. No, he doesn't have a lot of wives. He has had a lot of wives, several anyway, but not all at once, okay? All right, so that is all I have time for, because I'm watching the clock here. I've got to go to Bible study tonight. So thank you very much for watching. I'm just going to recap real quick. Hezbollah is very active in the Western Hemisphere. They are active in the Western Hemisphere, particularly with this used car scheme where they buy used cars in the United States. They ship them to Benin, cash. It's all cash, transactions. Sell them at a profit in Benin. The profits go to Hezbollah, and the money to buy the cars comes from Hezbollah using their money to buy narcotics in Colombia and Venezuela, and then shipping the narcotics to the United States, getting a profit on the narcotics, using the profit to buy more cars. The cars go make a profit in Africa. The profit goes to Hezbollah, and the whole cycle repeats. That's the main point of this thing. The Biden administration has done nothing to stop or even slow that process, and has done a lot to exacerbate the process. So the next administration could do a whole lot more to help Israel defeat Hezbollah, and let's hope that they do. Okay? So, Connie says no Bible study tonight. Did they cancel it, babe? I guess maybe they canceled our Bible study. Okay, well then, if they canceled our Bible study, then I'll take a couple questions if you have any questions, okay? While I'm at it, let me just one more time mention, please go to chuckholton.com and plans changed, Connie says. Okay, no Bible study, canceled. Okay, good. Please go to chuckholton.com. I'm going to keep pushing this book until the election, because you need to know you need this information. I would appreciate any of you who have gotten the book and have read through some of it and got a feel for it to post something in the chat right now about what you thought about it. Did I shave my beard? No, I didn't. I just cut it down quite a bit and then forgot to shave the rest of it. it was bothering me. So it's hot here in Panama. I've been working out a lot here, and so I sweat a lot. And so I just cut it very short. But then I haven't shaved either. So it kind of all blends together. Do I think there are some hostages alive? Yes, I do. Why am I living in Panama? I'll do a whole podcast on that shortly, probably after the election. I'll do an entire podcast on why we live in Panama. But suffice it to say, Obamacare was one big reason. How's the situation in Europe? Do I know concerning Hezbollah? Well, Hezbollah also has a lot of cells in Europe. They also procure and sell a lot of their narcotics over there. Hezbollah actually grows a lot of drugs inside Lebanon. They sell a lot of hashish. Now, if you don't know what hashish is the resin from the cannabis plant that is then, collected and ground up and maybe cut with tobacco or something like that. Okay, and it's very potent, more potent than marijuana. That's hashish. It's sometimes smoked, sometimes vaped, different things. But that's hashish, and they actually grow that in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, and so that ends up in large part in Europe. They also are big into another drug called Captagon. Captagon is a drug that is a lot like Ritalin. Okay, it's the brand name for phenethylamine, which is a synthetic stimulant that combines an amphetamine and a theophylline, which is a kind of like caffeine. Okay, so imagine if you took caffeine and cocaine and put them together and made pills out of it. Those pills are usually, cut, and so they're not super deadly, but they create, and it was actually a legal drug at one time, but then they figured out it was very addictive, and it creates a euphoric high. It increases, this is the reason that it's very popular in the Middle East. It increases stamina and alertness. Those effects can allow people to stay awake for long periods of time and stay very focused for long periods of time. So it makes it very popular among combatants in different wars across the Middle East. It reduces their appetite and their need for sleep. So a lot of people say that it creates super soldiers, and Hezbollah has been known to produce, they're the primary production center for Captagon, but they have centers also in Syria and other places that distribute these compounds in pill form throughout Saudi Arabia, Jordan, other Gulf countries where demand is especially high. There are energy drinks you can find that have that compound in them, or at least there were. I don't know if they've been pulled off the market, but there was a time not too many years ago when you could still find certain energy drinks. And we used to joke that Wild Tiger was one of them. And I used to make, I make these commercials like Wild Tiger, about energy drinks. That started by making energy drink commercials about Wild Tiger when I was in Syria. So Captagon makes them a bunch of money too. And so, yes, they are active in Europe. Do I think Donald Trump what do I think he will do if elected with the Iran nuclear deal? He'll scuttle it. He has said so. He said as much, and he did during his first administration. So, Dean says, will you please cover the peace deal when Israel and Mohammed bin Salman made peace? Yeah, it's the Abraham Accords. It was not just with Israel and Saudi Arabia, but it's, that's an interesting question. The Abraham Accords are still a thing. They've been terribly strained for sure, but the Trump administration would certainly throw its weight behind continuing to expand the Abraham Accords to more countries. So the Abraham Accords are between like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel, and the UAE. And there might be, maybe Jordan is in there, I forget. I'm doing this off the top of my head. And it normalized relations between those countries. Basically, those Arab countries admitted that Israel has the right to exist. And that's a huge thing. And why'd they do that? Because Trump went to them and said, look how much money you could be making. Look how good your economy could be doing if you had Israel as a trading partner instead of an enemy. And those guys they looked at the numbers and they were like, yeah, we could be making a lot of money. It would be very good for our economy if we had that entire market, all these wealthy Israelis to sell to and to buy from. So, yeah. So he's going to throw his weight behind the Abraham Accords, no question. Rob Taylor says, which would be the worst as far as riots, Harris or Trump winning? You can guess. I'm going to be circumspect about that just because just talking about it yesterday got my video yesterday demonetized. And that's one of the reasons I keep pushing people over to chuckholton.com, because it's like an insurance policy against getting demonetized on YouTube. But they demonetized the YouTube video yesterday for that very reason, because I talked about the election a little too much, and they don't want me to do that. What happened when Sinwar was killed? They didn't even know it was Sinwar. They just saw some militants running around. They started exchanging fire with those guys, and they ended up unaliving those guys. And then they went and took their masks off and found out, oh gosh, look at that. It's Sinwar. That's what happened. Somebody asked, do I think any of the female hostages might have gotten pregnant? I think it is highly likely, just from knowing what like ISIS did. ISIS took thousands of captives among the Yazidi girls when they invaded Iraq, and they immediately made ISIS wives out of many of those women. And there are still Yazidi women who were taken captive in 2014 that have not gotten back home. We actually tried to raise money to help to fund the repurchasing a guy's wife from ISIS back, this is 2016 or 17, something like that. And we were unable to get her out, unfortunately. The money that we raised was stolen, and she's, as far as I know, has never gotten out. And she was already married to a Yazidi man, but she was turned into a Yazidi bride to an ISIS guy. So pretty bad. Okay, are the Houthis still causing havoc? Yes, the United States actually struck the Houthis yesterday. And the Houthis have fired probably at least one missile a day at Israel since, I don't know, I mean, for weeks at least. Months. One other thing I'm going to mention, just to get you thinking about it, we are looking to start raising money for a really cool thing. This is a really cool thing we're going to try to do. I think I mentioned, at least I did over on chuckholton.com, that Connie and I are going to go to Iwo Jima next year for the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Iwo Jima. And we've already bought our tickets and everything. We're going. That's not what I'm raising money for. While we're there, we're going to go to Tinian, which is another island in the Pacific that saw huge battles, was the largest tank battle in the Pacific in World War II. And then once we took over the island of Tinian, we made it the largest airfield in the Pacific in World War II. And that's where the Enola Gay took off from to go bomb Hiroshima with the first nuclear bomb. So it's a famous place, but it's fallen into disrepair. It's being rebuilt now as an airfield by the United States to counter China and their threats against Taiwan. So that's an interesting story. So I decided we were going to go out there, and I'm going to just do a report on that because it's a short flight from Guam. We'll already be in Guam, so why not? Two birds, one stone kind of thing. But a friend of mine called me and said he had he'd found a knife that was found on Tinian, stuck into some bones of a Japanese soldier and it was a K-bar Marine Corps fighting knife stuck in the bones of this Japanese soldier on Tinian. And so this old rusted knife was found. They brought it back to the States. On the handle of the knife was carved the initials of ostensibly the guy who owned it. And through a lot of work and a lot of hard work and sleuthing, they were able to find, this friend of mine was able to find the family of the guy who actually owned the knife. And they even have, I think they have a picture of the soldier, the Marine with that knife. So they know it was his knife. And so they got a hold of the family, and they live in Chicago somewhere, and said, we've got the knife from your grandfather that he left on Tinian stuck into a Japanese soldier. And they were just blown away by that. So we're going to return the knife to that family. And we're trying to raise, we're going to start raising money over at chuckholton.com to do a documentary about this. And as part of the documentary, to fly the family over to Tinian and present them the knife where it was found on Tinian. Won't that be cool? Would that make an awesome little short documentary? You know, of course, flying 3 or 4 people over there from that family, they don't probably have the money to do it. So we're going to offer to help. And so anyone can go, but you have to apply for the tour. I don't know what tour we're talking about, Diane. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not going to do a tour over there because it's already full. We have to get on someone else's tour to go to Iwo Jima, and it's full. It's the last. They're actually expecting to have 2 veterans from the Battle of Iwo Jima, both over 100 years old, attend the commemoration this year in Iwo Jima, and obviously it'll be the last time that there will ever be, most likely, veterans of the battle who are on Iwo Jima. So it's already well subscribed. Can the family bring the knife back to the U.S. via TSA? Yes, they can. You can bring knives back. I do it all the time. You just have to put them in your checked luggage, not in your carry-on luggage. That's all. You can bring a knife back, no big deal. It's already been brought back once. It's in the United States now. But we're going to actually take it back to Tinian and present it to the family on Tinian if we can raise the money to get over there. So wouldn't that be cool? So just something to be thinking about. And this is the reason why you want to be a supporter over on chuckholton.com, because this is the kind of thing you get to be a part of. And how cool is that? All right. So we're over an hour. So I'm gonna go eat some supper and spend some time with my lovely wife. God bless you. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care.